Last August, I crushed some raspberries to extract the seeds and plant them. I cleaned the seeds, wrapped them in a paper towel, sprayed some water on them, and placed them in a sealed plastic bag to keep them moist. In April this year, I opened the paper towel and a few seeds had finally sprouted. I decided to transplant them into a larger pot to avoid damaging the small sprouts. I simply planted them along with the paper towel in the soil. I watered them and waited for the raspberries to grow. 3 days later, 3 small sprouts appeared. After 15 days, there was a cluster of small sprouts, but they were growing too slowly. It wasn't until day 65 that they grew 3 or 4 small leaves. To get raspberries sooner, I decided to remove the small, weaker, and sickly ones, leaving only 2 strong seedlings to grow. A week later, they had grown noticeably. By day 78, the small sprouts had finally grown 6 or 7 leaves. Though their growth was slow, they were progressing at least. To speed things up, I bought 2 raspberry seedlings online at the beginning of April. They looked like little branches, but they had small buds on them. Looking at the roots, they were wrapped in cling film to keep them moist. I immediately removed the cling film, separated the 2 seedlings, trimmed off the overly long roots, and planted them directly into a large pot with the soil. After planting the seedlings, I watered them thoroughly and waited for them to grow. A week later, the raspberry leaves had grown several more layers. It looked like both raspberry plants had survived. A few days later, I was surprised to see that many rice plants had grown in the pot, and the new sprouts were also growing. Upon closer inspection, the raspberries had sprouted small thorns, meaning I would likely be able to eat my homegrown raspberries soon. I was so excited. On day 30, something unexpected happened. The rice husks that had sprouted turned into rice plants and grew like weeds. My friend said it was wild grass, so I decided to pull it out to prevent it from affecting the raspberries. Can you tell if it was rice or weeds after pulling them out? The pot looked much cleaner from the bottom up. The raspberry on the left was lush and green, and I noticed the branches were starting to flower. Upon closer inspection, I realized those were flower buds. The other plant also had flower buds, so it looked like I would be eating raspberries this year. However, things don't always go smoothly. For some reason, the raspberry plant next to the healthy one fell off, so I pulled it out, leaving only 1 plant. That night, a strong 8-level wind and heavy rain came. The next day, when the sky cleared, I received some bad news. The branch of the raspberry was broken, with a flower bud still on it. Luckily, the other raspberry plant survived after going through many hardships. It finally flowered when the sun came out. The petals were white and very delicate, falling off easily when I lifted the leaves. I saw a bunch of flower buds, like I'll be eating raspberries in June. On day 41, I was surprised to see small raspberry sprouts emerging from the soil. By this time, the raspberries, branches, and leaves had become a bit weathered, but the small fruits had grown a little. However, the summer sun was too intense, and the raspberry leaves had scorched edges. By day 50, the raspberries looked like this. I noticed a few fruits had started to change color, though still small. They had a hint of red. The ones that hadn't turned red were still brown, and I hoped they would ripen soon. Looking from above, more raspberry seedlings had grown in the pot, which meant my raspberries were having offspring. On day 55, to prevent the branches from collapsing, I inserted a wooden stick for support. The small seedlings grew even more vigorously, and the fruits on the branches were nearly ready to ripen. By day 60, 5 or 6 raspberries had finally ripened. It really wasn't easy to get these few raspberries. Raspberries, also known as blackberries, were red and tempting. I decided to pick these fruits and taste them. These victorious fruits, although looking very tempting, had a sour-sweet taste that was surprisingly hard to enjoy.